For 4,500 years, they've been standing there in the desert, these incredible monuments to an ancient civilization's ambition. The Egyptian pyramids. They're honestly one of the greatest engineering puzzles in all of human history. So, how on earth did they do it? Let's break down one of the most amazing construction projects of all time. To really wrap your head around the scale we're talking about, let's just start with one number. 2.3 million. That's roughly how many stone blocks are in the Great Pyramid of Giza. And each one weighs, on average, 2.5 tons. That's like building an entire mountain out of stones that each weigh as much as an SUV.
And that leads us to the big, central question, right? How did they manage this incredible feat with just copper tools and sheer human power? I mean, it seems totally impossible. But the answer isn't aliens or magic. It's just brilliant organization, incredible ingenuity, and a really deep understanding of physics.
So to figure this out, we're going to approach it just like the original engineers did, as a series of massive problems that needed to be solved. We'll look at how the design evolved, we'll find out who the builders really were, see how they moved all that stone, and then dive right into the great debate about how they built it up. And finally, we'll just stand in awe of their mind-boggling precision.
All right, first up, an impossible feat of engineering. And it's so important to get this. The pyramids didn't just pop up out of the sand one day. Nope, they were the amazing result of centuries of trial and error.
It all started with these simple, flat-roof tombs called mastabas. Then, around 2630 BC, this absolute genius of an architect named Imhotep had an idea. What if we stack them? And boom, you get the very first step pyramid. After him, Pharaoh Snefru went through this intense period of experimentation. You can see it in his famous bent and red pyramids, as he worked to perfect that smooth-sided design. Every attempt, even the failures, was a lesson learned, and it all led to the final masterpiece, the Great Pyramid of Khufu.
Okay, a project on this scale needs a massive, and I mean massive workforce. This brings us to the first huge problem they had to solve, and it's probably one of the biggest misconceptions in all of history. Who actually built the pyramids?
You know, that classic image from the movies, right? Thousands of slaves being brutally worked to death under the hot sun. Well, modern archaeology tells a completely different and, frankly, a much more interesting story. The reality is, the pyramids were built by a huge, highly organized, and well-paid workforce of skilled Egyptian citizens.
And we have the receipts. The proof comes from an entire workers' village that was dug up right next to the pyramids. Archaeologists found bakeries, breweries, evidence of a diet packed with protein. And when they looked at skeletons from the workers' cemetery, they found healed bones, a clear sign they had access to good medical care. They were even organized into competing gangs with team names like the Friends of Khufu. So forget the whips and chains, their wages were paid in bread and beer. This was a national project, built by people who were proud and valued.
Okay, so you've got your workforce. The next massive problem is materials. How in the world do you quarry and then transport 2.3 million blocks of stone, some of which came from hundreds of miles away?
Well, the Egyptians ran this incredibly sophisticated supply chain. Now, most of the limestone for the core was quarried right there on the Giza Plateau, which was super convenient, but the other materials, that was a huge logistical challenge. The beautiful, high-quality white casing stones had to be floated across the Nile from Tura, and the enormous granite beams for the king's chamber, they had to travel from Aswan, that's over 500 miles to the south.
So the journey for just a single block was this whole multi-step process. First, they had to quarry it, which they did with pretty soft copper chisels and much harder stone pounders. For the long-haul stuff, they cleverly used the Nile's annual flood. When the water was at its highest, they could float these heavy blocks on barges almost right up to the construction site. Then, once on land, the blocks were heaved onto wooden sledges for that final, grueling drag to the pyramid.
But wait, how do you drag a 2-ton stone across desert sand without it just sinking? The answer is pure genius. For years, people saw ancient paintings of workers pouring water in front of these sledges and thought it was some kind of ritual, but it wasn't. Modern experiments have shown that adding just the right amount of water to sand makes it firm and cuts the friction by up to 50%. This one simple, brilliant trick made the whole operation possible.
So we've got the people, we've got the stones on site, now for the absolute biggest mystery of them all. How did they lift them, layer by layer, all the way up to a height of nearly 500 feet?
I mean, this is the question that has launched 1,000 theories. We're talking about lifting millions of blocks, again, some weighing as much as a truck, to build something as tall as a 40-story building. And they did it without cranes, without any modern machinery. It was the ultimate vertical challenge.
The honest truth is, we don't know for certain, but experts have a few leading ideas. The most popular one involves ramps. Maybe a huge, long, straight one, or one that zigzagged up one side, or even one that spiraled all the way around the pyramid. More recently, a fascinating theory has emerged about a hidden internal ramp. And of course, there are other ideas involving levers or maybe even water shafts.
Now, the ramp theory makes a lot of sense, but it comes with its own giant problem. For a single straight ramp to reach the top of the Great Pyramid, it would have had to be over a mile long. Think about that. Building the ramp would have been an engineering project almost as big as building the pyramid itself. And that's why the debate still rages on today, with many experts now thinking they probably used a combination of different methods.
But getting the blocks up there was really only half the battle. Because beyond the sheer, mind-blowing size, the most breathtaking thing about the pyramids is their precision. This wasn't just a massive construction job, it was a perfectly, and I mean perfectly, executed blueprint.
Okay, just listen to this number. The Great Pyramid is aligned to true north, south, east, and west with an accuracy of 3/60ths of a degree. That is an absolutely astonishing, almost unbelievable feat of ancient astronomy and surveying.
To give you some perspective, that's more accurate than many modern buildings are today. They did this 4,500 years ago, most likely by just watching the stars. It's just incredible.
And their mastery is just everywhere you look. The huge, 13-acre base, it's almost perfectly level, with a difference of less than an inch from one side to the other. They probably did this by cutting a grid of channels, filling them with water, and then marking the level. And the mortar they used is actually stronger than the stones it's holding together. Every single part of this was planned and carried out with near-perfect precision.
So, when you put it all together, what's the ultimate legacy of these incredible structures and the people who built them? Well, they are so much more than just tombs for long-dead pharaohs.
They really represent a peak of human achievement. You could call it a triumph of logistics, of mathematics, and of human organization on a scale that is just hard for us to even comprehend today. There's a reason they're the last surviving wonder of the ancient world.
And that really brings us to the most important takeaway of all. The pyramids aren't a mystery that needs aliens or some lost magical technology to explain them. No, they are a masterpiece of human capability. They are the ultimate testament to our own ingenuity, our perseverance, and the incredible things we can do when we work together.
The builders of the pyramids pushed the absolute limits of what was possible in their time to create something they believed would last for eternity. And it makes you wonder, doesn't it? What are the great projects of our time? What limits are we ready to push?